15th of May 2007. My name is Jeanette Francis, and I just want to say that Australians have no legal rights. You think you only have to worry about losing your rights if you do something wrong. Well, you're dreaming. Australians' rights are similar to the money for your mortgage. The money exists on paper only. There's no cash. Just like there's really no rights. It's all on paper. There is no way to stop government public officers from stealing your legal rights because they don't exist in the first place. What you think are legal rights are optional privileges. These optional privileges can be withdrawn on the whim of any person with any position of authority. There's no government guarantee that you have access to your legal rights or anything, even your real estate, as what happened to me. I had real estate in New South Wales in my name, my maiden name, my birth name, Jeanette Francis. My ex-de facto and I broke up. He refused to leave. He forged a document that said it was his house. I went to the police and said, would you help me evict him? They said, no, he's got a document that said he owns the house. I tried to get the water cut off. They said, no, they wouldn't do that because somebody's living in the house. He tried to change the land rates over to his name. Eventually I went to lawyers, which I couldn't afford, and they said, no, they won't let us help you. So I lost my house. Owen took an act in, Owen took a matter into the family court. I applied for property settlement because it was matters to do with children, and because we were de facto, I could have property matters. Judge Waddy, the alcoholic asshole, said he wouldn't deal with it, and it was struck out. Judge Waddy, in the end, made a decision that exonerated my father from raping me when I was 2, and exonerated Michael Bonasic from indecently assaulting me at the local government conference in 1997. This was done in his reasons for judgment at the end of the hearing, which I think was 1st of September 2000, he gave his reasons for judgment. I was there, Owen wasn't there, but when I got up and left because I was so disgusted, what he wrote in his reasons for judgment, I stormed out. All I did was get up and walk out the room, but he's such an asshole, that's what he wrote. So there's no way to stop government public officers from stealing your right, and public officers include politicians in positions of power. They include police officers, judges, medical doctors at public hospitals. Anybody who works for the government, who represents the government in any way, is a public officer. In the Crimes Act, there's legislation to punish public officers that do the wrong thing. It's rarely, if ever, enforced. The laws that we have just sit there. They're just little paper documents that sit there and basically do nothing unless there's a political reason to attack someone. The Australia Act of 1987 is a perfect example. It proves Australian federal government constitution, it proves the Australian federal constitution is totally worthless, and the enforcement of the constitution is totally optional. There was no referendum to change the federal constitution by the Australia Act in 1987. Australia's federal constitution demands a referendum to change any part of the constitution. However, the Australia Act of 1987 totally changed the heads of government in Australia, from Great Britain to Canberra Parliament, from appeal to the Queen in England to appeal to Australia's High Court as the highest court you could appeal to. Before, you could appeal right to the Privy Council and the Queen in England, but the Australia Act of 1987 stopped that, effectively altering the purpose of the Constitution, which said that we had right of appeal and the Queen was our head of state. So even appeals in the High Court are optional. The High Court doesn't have to accept your appeal if they don't want to. And my experience, which is evidence in the government's own documents, proves beyond a doubt that police can ignore you and refuse to assist you after a crime because there's nothing to stop them. medical doctors in hospital emergency rooms, they can ignore your emergency and refuse to treat them because there's nothing to stop them from doing that. Your local doctor can ignore you when you go to them with a medical problem. You could be writhing in pain, you could have blood pissing out of you, and they can just refuse to assist you because there is nothing to stop them. Your local member or senator in Parliament can ignore you. There's nothing to stop them. So what are your options? You write to your member of Parliament or your senator, you write them a letter thinking that they'll act to assist you because they're good people. Wrong. They're paid to be assholes. The bigger a mongrel they are to us, the longer they get to stay in their job and the more money they get to pay themselves for doing such a fucking wonderful job in their own mind. Maybe you lodge a formal complaint to one of the hundreds of complaints handling systems, being commissioners or ombudsmen, or the police complaints authority. They all investigate their friends, and you know they have no power to actually do anything once they make a decision. But that's how the government sets it up. They set it up so we think that we've got these powers, but in reality we've got nothing. Maybe you think you can file a claim in court and get a civil resolve for a common law injustice under the tort system, knowing it'll take decades anyway to resolve because that's how the court system works, because that's how the government wants it to work, to deter as many people as they possibly can from using the civil court systems. Or it'll be fast-tracked through the once outlawed star chamber systems in the 17th century, where they had one judge to make a decision that arbitrarily ruled against people because on the basis of government policy. But this is the system we have now in Australia, a star chamber system with unlawful rule. And as well, that's proved by what happened to me when I was in the family court system with Judge Waddy, as I said at the beginning. And even if you've got enough research under your belt to formulate a legal document that's acceptable to the court, because the government allows the court to make court rules that instruct your every action in filing a document, and if you don't file it exactly as is instructed in the court rules, then the public officers, they can say, no, you're not going to file it in court, so a judge doesn't even get to hear it anyway, even if you can find a decent judge. And from experience, all the judges in the inferior courts are open to corruption. The only ones that are probably going to be less corrupt are the ones in the High Court. They tend, because they're under tenure, so they tend to be more rigid to what's historically been handed down as common law. But you've got to get to the High Court, so you've got a decade or so of lack of procedural fairness in the state court systems or the federal court system before you can actually get to the High Court. And then the High Court can say, if they've had political pressure, I suspect the High Court can say, no, we're not going to take your matter. Representative parties like Darren Hinch's and Pauline Hanson's, they can't make it. I mean, they're great. I'm glad that they're there, but they can't make a real difference in Parliament. Their only political power is to be annoying, and that's basically, that's their duty, to be elected as a non-member of one of the two party preferred. Their responsibility to the people is to be annoying to the big end of town. The power is in the main two political parties, not the individual Prime Minister. He's got really bugger all to say. He does what he's told, not the ministers or the backbenchers or your local member or your senator. None of them really have power in the end. I suppose the most power is in the Senate because they can knock things back, but they can't actually put anything forward. Our Parliament and the public service will only start working properly when the political parties stop being allowed to be criminally influential on the elected members, threatening to take their job away if they don't perform like the party wants. I speak from experience. When I was an elected member of local government, I was told to vote by the Labor Party, the local members in my the local members of the Labor Party in my local area around Picton told me I had to vote in Wollondilly Shire Council in favour for this election, this development that was going before council. And they told me if I didn't vote in favour of this development, I would be expelled from the party. So I told them what they could do with that. Australian politics is basically a mafia-like protectionist racket. Our government claims our federal constitution is there to protect us, knowing at the time of federation, when the constitution was put into effect by men in positions of authority, it wasn't by a consultation between Australians, it was a consultation amongst well-heeled men who had property, and other people weren't allowed to participate in the constitution. And they was usually white men. The government was just as corrupt in the 1890s and the 1900s, obviously, as it is now, evidenced by the fact that the Constitution omitted a Bill of Rights. The same sort of thing, we had a Bill of Rights in England in 17 whatever it was, or 16 whatever it was. We had a Bill of Rights in America, but when Australia come to, I think they've got a Bill of Rights in Canada, just about everywhere except Australia. And the only reason Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights is because they're corrupt, and the system started as a corrupt system and it's continued historically as a corrupt system right from the time of its birth at Federation on 1st of January 1901. Modern political parties will protect their elected member as long as the member does what the party tells them to, which is what happened to me in Wollondilly. I know from first-hand experience, as I said. After I left the Labor Party, I joined the Liberal Party some years later, and I found that they operated in just about the same way, just different faces on different seats, but it was the same manoeuvres. You only hear the newsworthy stories because the press is politically aligned. They will only report whatever with whatever political party favours they have. The old adage, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's basically how the community in Australia works. So it probably does the same everywhere else. You may remember Australian citizen Cornelia Rao. She was an ex-Qantas employee, which is something you don't hear much about her. She was illegally expelled from Australia despite being an Australian citizen. At the turn of the century, it was about 2004, she suffered a mental breakdown, and as a result she was locked up by Queensland police for a whole year, and then deported. 5 years before that happened to Cornelia, I was illegally expelled from my elected position on local government in Wollondilly Shire. It was 1999, if you're not good at maths, and it was just shortly before my 43rd birthday. So I was in my political prime. I was at that stage an impartial, very independent, very active, conscientious community representative in my electorate. I'd funded a number of activities and gone around personally to my electors to try and get them to sign petitions. I got hundreds of responses for that, the most that had ever been received in council. I did a petition amongst high school students. Before I started on council, I did a petition amongst high school students in the McCarthy area, and I got thousands of responses from kids that normally tell their parents to get effed. I got all those responses, and they all said the same thing. They all said the government was doing the wrong thing and creating youth homelessness. I put that to a House of Representatives committee on youth homelessness, and that was duly ignored. So I was in my political prime, and as I said, I was an impartial and active member in my community. I'd been inflicted with numerous actions of criminal assault and battery over the 2 years before I was illegally expelled. Some of these assaults and batteries happened in the public eye. Some happened from my fellow councillors. Some happened from people I didn't know. Some happened in private, and most of my fellow councillors were aware that I was being targeted for these assaults or for assaults. Whether they knew exactly what it was, I don't know. But unlike Cornelia Rao, I was a prominent member of the community. I was considered a VIP in government circles and known by my preferred first name being Jenny to a number of high-profile state and federal politicians, Labor and Liberal, through my membership in the Labor Party. However, I had been subjected to sexual assault and battery at a local government conference. So because I became a disposable asset for my fellow elected councillors in Wollondilly, who all had individual motives to injure my reputation, I was expelled from council. Clearly my assault and battery and my legal expulsion from council, it was illegal. They had no legal grounds and I was given no right of reply, none at all. They did it behind my back and when I wasn't there. So clearly my assault and battery and my legal expulsion from council was newsworthy, but the press in the Wollondilly-Macarthur area refused to actually report it. They remained silent. The press didn't want to tell you about it to show their solidarity with their favourite political party. As a result of my assault and battery on council, I became a non-person. All services were denied to me. I didn't quite realise at the time because I wasn't really reliant on government services. But when I went to access them, I found there was barriers up. Like when I went to access family law services, I was obstructed. When I tried to get a resolution on my real estate, I was obstructed. Every time I tried to do something, there was a barrier put up. And not only was there a barrier there, something else would come from every effort I made to get a resolution. There would be another problem. They would create another problem. So not only do Australians have no rights, none at all, you personally ensure that our legal rights are denied us in perpetuation because you believe if it doesn't happen to you, you're not going to do anything. Or you think I'm delusional, or both. I don't really know, that's up to you. But basically I say test the system yourself. If you feel so strongly enough to call me names or whatever you might do, or laugh at me behind my back, you go and have a little test of the system and see. I mean, this could be your kids in years to come trying to get a resolve through the system. You know, there's some things that I've written this down. So there's some things that that I wanted to say, but I won't say because I don't want to offend genuine people. But basically, I know that a lot of people that will watch this video belong to the group who have mocked me and caused me criminal harm. They're probably all sitting back laughing at me now, and they're probably in the majority of the viewers. So, you know, I'm not really too fussed with trying to convince anyone to do anything. The reality is, the evidence that I'm right, that I've been medically mutated, is in the 5th of May 2006 MRI at Benson Radiology in the location that's next to the Ashford Hospital, where I was criminally assaulted in 2006. In about March 2006 by Shane Goodyear and his criminal accomplices who lied in he detained me under the Mental Health Act, said I was insane and said that I threatened to shoot people with a gun. That particular document that he wrote was supposed to have been given to me that day. I was sent to Royal Adelaide Hospital and the staff there was supposed to give me the document because he'd actually injected me with a knockout drug, so I was carried unconscious from Ashford Hospital in an ambulance with a police escort. And I woke up in Royal Adelaide Hospital to find out I'd be detained under the Mental Health Act. And they were supposed to give me the document straight away. They refused to give me any document. I was told I could leave the hospital as soon as the doctor came in and examined me. but they will refuse to give me the documents that the Mental Health Act says they have to give me. And it took 5 years before the Crown Solicitor gave me a copy of the documents in a court process where I was trying to get justice for obstructions to my access to medical rights. And then the judge said to me, well, it's no wonder you haven't been able to get anything done if this is what you've done. So the judge took for gospel what Goodyear had said, like that I had this gun, even though I never had a gun and I never said it. It was a lie, but because it was on paper, the judge said, well, I must have done it. But the thing is, police never charged me for threatening someone with a gun, which is what they do if you do something criminal. But I never got any criminal charges because then they'd have to tell me and I'd be able to defend it. So it took 5 years of that bullshit sitting in my government records. And when I went to the Health and Community Services Complaints Commissioner to lodge a complaint about Shane Goodyear, somebody tipped them off. I was coming up the elevator. There was no security at the front desk. So somebody had been stalking me, rung up, tipped them off. I was coming upstairs. They ran, as I got out of the elevator, because there's only 1 or 2 floors up, I saw them running from the door. They'd locked the glass door and I saw the woman hiding behind the counter. So she'd locked the door, hid behind the counter and rung security, because very shortly security turned up, looked at me, analysed the situation, shook his head, took my documents, unlocked the door and took them inside. So, you know, this is the crap that I have to face trying to get some resolve from this corrupt system that employs psycho idiots in their public service that are allowed to refuse your access to what the government say is your legal right. It's the biggest bullshit system, and it's one eye-opener that you would never realise the garbage that goes on in government unless you experience it first hand. So Australia has a morally corrupt legal system. Australia has a morally corrupt legal system exercised optionally by intentionally incompetent public officers. We affectionately call enforcement police and judiciary. Australia has a essentially worthless parliamentary system that only manages economics, a government in which essential human care services to protect and maintain life are considered optional. Australia has an army of psychopathic sadists who gravitate to the medical professions so they get paid to watch human suffering. They don't get paid to make people better, they get paid to treat sick people. And treating doesn't mean making them better. So what can you do if you have a bad doctor? You can remortgage your house if you have one. If you don't, you're up shit creek. You can't get legal aid for civil matters. Community legal centres won't give you legal advice if you're going to sue the state or the federal government. So if you're trying to sue the hospital, you won't get us help from any of the community funded legal centres, including the universities. So you've got a legal battle of medical negligence, and if you do happen to get someone to represent you, you need an expert medical practitioner who's probably corrupt in their own way, and they've got to prove your claim on their evidence that the other doctor's corrupt. I mean, like, how often does it happen? I mean, you add how many people who've suffered a medical negligence and then evaluate how many people actually got their matter to court, despite the legal merit of the case. I mean, I've got a number of medical negligence cases. I've had a dislocated thumb. That thumb won't go back any further. I've had this dislocated thumb since 2006, and I can't get any medical services to get it fixed, and I can't get any legal services to get any compensation for breach of my common law rights. So how can anybody even possibly say we have a system that works? We don't have a system. We have this ad hoc patch of garbage that only people that are corrupt get access to, or people who pay large sums of money. So I was told by the people who surgically raped me in the 1990s that it was happening to me because no one liked me. That's why I was attacked. So let's examine who doesn't like me. Sydney police detectives, they don't like me because one of them suicided over the guilt he felt for not protecting me after I was raped by another Freemason when I was 2 years old. Sydney Freemasons don't like me because I witnessed the rape and murder of 2 boys at a Freemason temple in Campbelltown, New South Wales when I was 11. Sydney police don't like me because their children raped me when I was 15 and 16. So who else doesn't like me? Well, the leader of the Labor Party at one time, federal leader Kim Beazley, him and his supporters, they don't like me. They don't like me because I exposed one of Beazley's scams involving the Master Builders Association that affected one of my children in about 1992. The Australian Labor Party supporters, well, as a result of the Kim Beazley affair, they didn't like me, but they didn't like me because I complained about being sexually assaulted at the 1997 local government conference by a Labor Party endorsed candidate for Macarthur in the 1998 federal election. A fellow councillor at Wollondilly Shire was the nominated person. Sydney police don't like me because they told me I deserved to be sexually assaulted at the 1997 local government conference because they said I probably did something to make him think it was all right. So, what did I do? Well, the family of my ex-de facto, Owen Hall, who's now deceased, they don't like me because I placed a $10,000 reward in a Sydney newspaper in 1999 for information leading to a conviction about my ex-de facto's actions in secretly videotaping us, that was when we had tapes, having sex when we were both aged around 30, in about 1994. And then he placed those videos, he posted those videos to my customers. I had a retail store that sold custom-built computers and repaired computers called Data Mouse in Camden, in front of the AH Nye Hall in Argyle Street. And from there I did the computers. I custom built and sold computers and repaired, and I sold stationery to local businesses. So Owen decided to post these videos to customers on my customer database. And he passed them around to fellow coal miners in the Bargarang Valley and across to Appin, and he passed them around to Sydney Police through one of our neighbours, Police Detective Bob Bradbury, who's named in the Allen and Unwin's Brothers in Arms book, where a photo of Owen and I were in there to say that I was the murdered Leanne Walters, and he was the bloke who suicided in jail because I sent him a Valentine's Day card. Well, let's just flip back a little bit. I always sent Jack Bassett and his wife a Christmas card, and Jack Bassett was the bloke who suicided over his guilt for not prosecuting or not arresting the bloke who raped me when I was 2, who was my father. So you can see how they twist things, and we all know that that's what cops do anyway, twist the facts. So my family don't like me because I don't want to perpetrate the incest that was historically deeply entrenched in our Church of England family, our British Australian family on both sides, my mother's side and my father's side. So my own family don't like me. And who else doesn't like me? Well, I would guess, I don't know for sure, but I have to guess this one, but I guess Bob Hawke doesn't like me either, because ex-Prime Minister Bob Hawke, he was a Sydney Freemason around about the same time as my father was active as a Sydney Freemason, because my father is 90-something years old and about the same age as Bob Hawke. So These Sydney Freemasons, they were all used to visit each other. They used to go around to each other's meetings. That was how they networked. So exactly what did I do wrong? Evidently what I did wrong is that I expected to have access to my legal rights. You're apparently not supposed to do that if you're a victim of politically motivated crime. Instead, I discovered that there was no legal rights for Australians. The legal rights only exist on paper. So I yelled to the rooftops to tell everybody in, I don't know how many websites I had, have to be close to 100. I did a lot of websites and put a lot of stuff in there and trying to get out to people the reality of it. And what happened was the people who stalked me, mostly police, they created counter websites and made comments in social networking locations to say that I was delusional and I had schizophrenia or whatever else it was. And actually one said that I should be careful I don't go to an emergency department because I might get detained under the Mental Health Act. So that was around this, I think that was probably Shane Goodyear that said that, because that was just after I was detained under the Mental Health Act by Shane Goodyear, and the person who made that comment called himself Brain Doctor. So wouldn't you make as much noise as you possibly could if you'd suffered half of the injustice that I've suffered? But I just sort of want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. The government's best practice, models for victims of political crime is don't think about them, they're going to die soon anyway. That's their best practice method. So the final word is for Rhonda Walk, my school chum in Campbelltown High in 1971, Campbelltown, New South Wales. Rhonda Walk is the daughter of a police officer, the sister of a police officer who I think was a detective. She married a bloke in the 1990s with the last name Brooks, so she became Rhonda Brooks. And then later on in the 1990s, she got with another bloke who had a similar last name to my de facto. Her last name was Halls with an S. Mine was Hall, singular. So she was also, Rhonda Hall was the wife of a coal miner with my ex-de facto. Her husband was a coal miner with my ex-de facto Owen. So Rhonda used to tell her husband and anybody who would listen that I used to beat her up at high school, which was bullshit. What happened in reality in 1971 at high school, when I was 15, was that Rhonda wanted to be my friend and I didn't want to be her friend. I don't know whether she was, at the time she may have been gay and liked girls, I don't know. But she wanted to be my friend. She was really forceful about wanting to be my friend and I just didn't want to be involved with her. And so in retaliation to that, every time she'd walk past me in the school ground, she would put her arm out and punch me in the stomach. So this went on for a number of weeks. I thought maybe she'd stop because I'm not an aggressive person, I'm a pacifist. So I sort of just let it go and hoped that it would stop, but she didn't stop. So I got fed up with it. I've got my girlfriend Elizabeth Selsby, who went to primary school with Rhonda Walk, and I got Elizabeth to call Rhonda around the back of the girls' toilet. So I went up to Rhonda and said, "Stop hitting me," and I slapped her across the side of the face. And I said, "Leave me alone," and I thumped her in the upper arm, and then I walked away. So in retaliation, Rhonda Walk and Elizabeth Selsby solicited my rape. So I was raped in September 1971, age 15, at an all-girls party. Some years later, the bloke who raped me, who I still know his name, but I'm not going to mention it, he apologised because he realised what he did was wrong. I thought I was over the rape, but evidently I'm not. During the process, I went into some sort of catatonic state and I was unable to move. And my girlfriends, but I do remember my girlfriends Elizabeth Selsby and Sharon Love standing at the doorway with Rhonda Walk, and they were laughing at me. So my final words is, fuck you. I'm still alive. It's not over yet.